Most missing person cases are solved fast, but some people vanish without a trace and then come back years later, alive. Where were they? Why did they leave? And what really happened while they were gone? In this video, we'll look at 5 real cases of people who disappeared, reappeared, and left behind more questions than answers. It was a normal day in the forests of Tuscany, Italy, until 2 mushroom pickers came across something unexpected. Near Cala Violina, a quiet spot along the Maremma coast, they found a man living deep in the woods. He had a thick beard, a dirty face, and looked like he had been surviving there for years. When asked who he was, he calmly said, "I am Spanish. My name is Carlos, and I have lived here for 20 years." This wasn't just anyone. The man identified himself as Carlos Sanchez Ortiz de Salazar, a name that had once made national news. Back in 1995, Carlos had vanished from his home in Seville, Spain. He was a 26-year-old doctor who had been quietly battling serious emotional struggles. One day, without warning, he walked away from everything: his family, his career, and his life. After years of silence, Carlos was legally declared dead in 2010. His family had mourned, accepted the loss, and tried to move on, but he hadn't died. Instead, he had been living alone, off the grid, in the forests of Italy. When the mushroom pickers met him, Carlos didn't seem interested in reconnecting with the outside world. He showed them his old passport to confirm who he was, but made it clear that he wanted to be left alone. "Now I must escape," he told them before disappearing once again. Before he left, the pickers took photos of his ID and contacted Penelope, an Italian group that helps families of missing persons. Through this group, word reached the Spanish authorities, who then got in touch with Carlos's family. His parents, Amelia and his father, rushed to Tuscany, hoping to finally see their son again after 20 years of wondering what had happened to him. But by the time they arrived, Carlos was gone. His campsite, made from a tarp tied between trees and a few jerry cans used to collect rainwater, had been taken down. There was no sign of him. His parents began searching the forest themselves, desperate for even a glimpse of him. Carlos's disappearance had been driven by emotional pain. It was clear he didn't want to return to his old life. Nature had become his escape. He had lived in total isolation for 2 decades, avoiding all human contact. To him, the forest was more comforting than anything the world had to offer. His mother, Amelia, confirmed that the ID was real. "That's him. He is alive, and that is the most important thing," she said. Still, she understood that he might not want to come back. "We respect his freedom," she added, "but we won't leave until we've held him in our arms, even if it's just once more." Carlos's sister, Olga, shared a message of gratitude. "Thank you for giving us hope, even a little relief, after all these painful years," she posted online. Local residents said they had occasionally seen a quiet man walking through the woods, but no one had ever approached him. He had become almost like a ghost, someone who lived alongside the world but didn't take part in it. Despite being found, Carlos's story remains unfinished. He returned to the shadows as quickly as he had come out of them. His family is left hoping that maybe one day he'll choose to come back, or at least let them know he's okay. Carlos's story reminds us that sometimes people don't vanish to be found. Some are running from pain they can't explain. In the quiet of the forest, Carlos may have found something he couldn't get anywhere else: silence, space, and peace. Whether he'll ever be seen again is unknown, but for now, his story lives on, in the trees of Tuscany, in the hearts of his family, and in the questions he left behind. It was 1991 in a small village in eastern Romania. Vasile Gorgos, a 63-year-old farmer, left home for what was supposed to be a short business trip. He regularly traveled to sell cattle and always returned on time. On this trip, he left with a return train ticket in hand, promising his family he'd be back soon. But this time, he never came back. As hours turned into days, his family became anxious. Vasile was known to keep in touch and never strayed from routine. When they couldn't reach him, they alerted the police. A search was launched, but no trace of him was found. Days passed, then weeks, then months, with no answers. It didn't make sense. He was a man of habit, and his sudden disappearance left his family and community stunned. Eventually, his loved ones accepted the worst. With no signs of him anywhere, they believed he had passed away. Memorial services were held in his honor, and life moved on. The mystery of what happened to Vasile slowly faded as years went by. But then something strange happened. On August 29, 2021, 30 years later, a car pulled up at the gate of the Gorgos family farm. An elderly man stepped out. To their shock, it was Vasile. He looked confused, as if he didn't recognize his own home. He was now 93 years old, but something was even more unsettling. He was wearing the same clothes he had on the day he vanished. The family was stunned. The man who had been gone for 3 decades was suddenly standing in front of them. Vasily looked lost, both physically and mentally. He didn't seem to remember much about his life or even his children. When asked where he had been, he gave a single word: home. But he couldn't explain what had happened during the missing years. One detail that stood out was the car that dropped him off. It sped away so fast that no one could get a look at the license plate. And in Vasily's pocket, a valid train ticket for the same route he took the day he disappeared, Baku to Ploiești. Medical tests showed Vasily was in surprisingly good health for his age. While doctors found some neurological issues, they said it was likely due to aging. But his memory of the past 30 years was gone. He remembered his birth year, and that his wife had passed but had trouble recognizing his own son and daughter. Theories about what happened to Vasily quickly spread. Some thought he had left on his own to start a new life. Others believed he might have been taken in by someone and forced to live under a new identity. That could explain the same clothes. Maybe he had been held somewhere and only released when he could no longer work. There were also suggestions from mental health professionals. One idea was that Vasily could have been living with a memory-related condition, which might have led him to live a different life without realizing it. But experts pointed out that it was rare for such a condition to last uninterrupted for 30 years. A darker theory suggested that Vasily may have been taken and forced into labor and only brought back when he was no longer able to continue. This would explain his confusion, the lack of memories, and the sudden return without warning. Of course, some believed in more unusual ideas, alien encounters, secret government experiments, but these had no solid evidence to support them. To this day, no one knows what really happened. Not Vasily, not his family, and not the authorities. His son later said, "We don't understand him. He doesn't know what he's saying. He talks about the time when he used to sell cattle. We ask one thing. He tells us something else. Maybe someone kept him. Who knows what life he lived?" The return of Vasily Gorgos didn't bring closure. It only opened more questions. His disappearance and reappearance remains one of Romania's strangest unsolved mysteries, and for his family, the search for answers may never end. It was the summer of 1981 in Seaside, California. 13-year-old Mary Louise Day lived with her mother, Charlotte, and her stepfather, William Hoole, a military man stationed at nearby Fort Ord. Mary's early life had been unstable, marked by time in foster care, a difficult family life, and her mother's multiple marriages. Just before Mary vanished, an argument broke out between her and William. That night would be the last time anyone saw her. Her disappearance raised immediate questions. Her younger sisters, Kathy and Sherry, were told that Mary had run away, but no one filed a missing persons report, not even her parents, and for years, no one talked about her. It wasn't until 1994, over a decade later, that Sherry, now an adult, reported Mary missing. That step reopened a case that would only grow stranger over time. When investigators looked into it, they discovered troubling details. William had a known history of being aggressive toward Mary. During a police interview in 2003, he admitted to being furious with her on the night she vanished, accusing her of harming his dog. He said he had lost control and may have hurt her, though he stopped short of making any direct admissions. At one point, he told investigators that, "A demon inside me could have killed Mary," a disturbing statement that deepened suspicions around him. Evidence also began pointing to something more serious. Cadaver dogs alerted authorities to possible human remains at 2 properties connected to the family, one where Mary had lived and another where they moved afterward. At the first home, a buried teddy bear, a child's shoe, and a belt buckle were found, though no remains were uncovered. It was believed that Mary's body may have once been buried there and later moved in an attempt to cover up what had happened. Despite all of this, no arrests were made, and the case hit a wall until 2003, when something unexpected happened. In Phoenix, Arizona, a woman was pulled over in a routine traffic stop. She identified herself as Mary Louise Day and had a valid driver's license to prove it. This discovery shocked everyone. The woman seemed to know basic facts about Mary's past, like her mother's name, but couldn't recall key events, especially the argument involving the dog. DNA tests showed she was Charlotte's biological daughter. Still, police weren't convinced. She spoke with a heavy Southern accent, even though Mary had spent her entire life in California. Experts said it was unlikely she developed that accent without years of living in the South. Her version of events didn't line up with what authorities and Mary's family knew. This woman, dubbed Phoenix Mary, raised serious doubts. Another detail made things even murkier. Her ID had only been issued 3 weeks before she was stopped by police. Investigators began to wonder, had someone deliberately found a woman to pose as Mary to throw off the investigation? Could Phoenix Mary have been a hidden daughter of Charlotte's, used to distract authorities? Facial recognition technology brought a glimmer of hope. A photo taken about a year after Mary vanished showed a girl who looked just like her. The software determined there was a 99% match. This was enough for Sherry to believe the woman in Phoenix was truly her long-lost sister. She had always hoped Mary had survived, and the photo gave her something solid to hold on to. Sherry eventually traveled to Arizona to meet the woman in person, just before her death in 2017. She described the meeting as emotional, saying it gave her a sense of peace after so many years. But investigators remained unsure. The inconsistencies in her story, her accent, and her limited memory continued to cast doubt. In 2017, the case was officially closed. The Seaside Police Department declared that the woman found in Phoenix was indeed Mary Louise Day. Still, for Sherry and others close to the case, doubts lingered. Had they really found Mary, or had they been misled by a carefully staged lie? The mystery of Mary Louise Day, who some called the girl who died twice, remains one of the most confusing missing person cases in recent memory. Though the case is closed, the questions surrounding Mary's disappearance and reappearance continue to haunt those who knew her and followed her story. It was February 8, 2002, in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. Brenda Heist, a 42-year-old mother of two, had just dropped off her children, 8-year-old Morgan and 12-year-old Lee, at school. It was a normal morning, but everything changed not long after. Brenda had been going through a difficult time. Her marriage was falling apart, money was tight, and she had just been denied housing assistance. Feeling hopeless, she sat alone in a park, crying. As she sat there, a group of homeless individuals noticed her. They approached her, asked if she was okay, and listened as she opened up about her situation. Then they made an unexpected offer. She could come with them to Florida. In a split-second decision, Brenda agreed. She walked away from her life, her kids, and her home, and never looked back. For the next 11 years, Brenda lived in secret. She adopted new names, first Kelsey Lyanne Smith, then others over time. Her old identity was gone. In Florida, she spent her first 2 years living under bridges, getting by on leftover food from restaurants. It was a harsh life, but eventually things started to shift. She met a man, and they lived together in a camper for several years, doing odd jobs like cleaning boats and working as day laborers. When that relationship ended, she ended up on the streets again, but over time managed to rebuild some stability. Brenda began working as a house cleaner and made new friends, including a woman named Sandra Forrester, whom she eventually moved in with. During this period, Brenda went by the name Lovey Smith. She told everyone she was a widow with no children. In reality, her children were still in Pennsylvania, growing up without any answers. Forrester said she never knew who Brenda really was. Brenda had made up stories about a husband named Lee who worked for Marriott and had passed away after traveling the world. Still, little details didn't add up. One of Forrester's sons, around the same age Brenda's son would have been, mentioned the name Heist. When asked about it, he admitted Brenda had told him that was her real last name. Meanwhile, Brenda's family had spent over a decade wondering what had happened. Her children believed something terrible had occurred. Her husband, Lee Sr., was even considered a suspect for a time, but was eventually cleared. In 2010, with no leads and no hope, he had Brenda declared legally deceased to find closure. Then in 2013, everything changed. Brenda, now 53, walked into a Florida police station and revealed who she really was. She had been arrested for a probation violation, and her alias triggered a deeper investigation. That's when authorities learned the truth. Brenda Heist, missing for 11 years, was alive. She told police she left because she'd reached an emotional breaking point. The pressures of life had overwhelmed her, and in a moment of despair, she made a choice she couldn't take back. She explained that she had thought about her family every day but never made contact. Her return stunned everyone. Morgan, now an adult, shared her anger online, saying she had spent years grieving, never knowing her mother had walked away by choice. She said she hoped to forgive one day, but only for her own peace. Her father, Lee Sr., also struggled with the news. After everything, years of suspicion and pain, he said he didn't plan to visit Brenda but was trying to move forward. Even Brenda's own mother was left shaken. The truth had finally come out, but the damage had already been done. Brenda expressed regret, admitting she never thought it would go this far and that she never imagined how much her absence would hurt those she left behind. Brenda now faces charges related to forgery, stolen identities, and drug possession. She's also dealing with the emotional weight of returning to a life she abandoned. Her children are left to rebuild from a past they never expected. The future for Brenda remains uncertain, but for her family, the scars are already there. It was the fall of 1965 in Columbus, Nebraska. Two people, Jacqueline Jackie Raines Crackman, 18, and Melvin Uphoff, 31, vanished without warning. Jackie was a young mother of 2 and Melvin was a father of 4. Their disappearances shocked the small town and left their families confused. What made the case even more puzzling was the lack of evidence and the unusual events surrounding both of them. At the time, both Jackie and Melvin were married to other people. Jackie lived just outside Columbus with her husband and children. Melvin worked as the manager of a local co-op and had a family of his own. Even though they were committed to other relationships, the two had quietly started seeing each other. Their relationship wasn't widely known until right before they disappeared. Jackie was the first to go missing. On September 24, 1965, she vanished from Columbus. Her family was immediately worried. Jackie had left her 2 young children behind, which didn't make sense to anyone who knew her. Her brother Jim later said, "For her to just leave and not come back, that's not my sister." The family couldn't understand what had happened, especially since there was no clue as to where she had gone or why she would leave so suddenly. A month later, on October 24th, Melvin disappeared too. His wife noticed something was off in the days leading up to it. He had been acting strangely, especially after Jackie visited their home and admitted to the affair. After that visit, Melvin's behavior changed. Then one day, he was just gone, along with his car, belongings, and even his coin collection. At the time, many believed Jackie and Melvin had run off together. Jackie had once told her family she would leave when her ship came in, which made some think she had planned it. But their families had doubts. Neither of them seemed like the kind of person who would leave their kids behind and never look back. There were also worries that something worse might have happened, but there was no proof of that either. For decades, the case went cold. Investigators followed every lead they could, but nothing solid came up. Jackie and Melvin remained missing, and their families were left without answers. Then, in 2009, 44 years later, everything changed. Police got a tip from an anonymous source. It led them to something no one expected. Jackie and Melvin were alive. After all that time, they had been living under new identities in another city, far from Nebraska. Investigators were able to confirm it after speaking with them on the phone, but the couple refused to share more. They said they wanted to be left alone and asked for their privacy to be respected. The news was shocking. Melvin's daughter, Michelle, said she couldn't understand how a parent could walk away from their children like that. "I'm a mom, and I can't imagine leaving my boys and never seeing them again," she said. That confusion was shared by both families. The hardest part wasn't just that Jackie and Melvin had left. It was not knowing why. Why would they abandon their kids and their lives? What could have pushed them to make such a decision? No one ever got a clear answer. The couple kept their reasons private, and police didn't release any further details. When the story came out in 2009, there was no outrage, just a mix of shock, relief, and pain. Their families had lived for decades thinking something terrible had happened, and now they had to come to terms with the fact that Jackie and Melvin had simply chosen to start over. In the end, this case wasn't about a crime or a tragic ending. It was about 2 people who made a choice to leave everything behind. That decision changed the lives of everyone connected to them. And while their reasons may never be fully understood, the impact of what they did is something their families still live with to this day.